Hello and welcome to the 7th part in our Dominion 6 guide for new players. In this part we'll be talking a little bit more about magic, magical paths and mage recruitment, as well as getting another battle in. So, at the end of last episode, I was briefly gushing over the fact that we got an air random on one of our master smiths. What did I mean by that? Looking at the recruitment in Ulm and inspecting the master smith, we get its full unit card. As an aside, you can see for commanders that they have 3 extra stats: leadership, magic leadership, and undead leadership, which is the number of those troops that a commander can lead. We'll go on to this more later. I keep talking about paths. What do I mean? You can see in our Master Smith's card that he has these 2 symbols, a flame and a hammer. These are fire and earth magic. The number after these is the level of mage skill in that type of magic. So we can see that at base, a Master Smith has fire and earth paths at level 1 and 2 respectively. You can see here on the recruitment card that he also has a question mark icon. Clicking on this, you can see that every time we recruit a Master Smith, they have a 20% chance to gain a level in one of these paths: fire, air, earth, or astral. It's quite lucky that on our 4th Master Smith we've made, we've got an extra path, especially in air. Looking at the rest of the Master Smith stats, we can see that they have the unhindered researcher ability, which lets them be unaffected by drain scales like we have in our Dominion, a resource bonus, which grants the number in brackets as extra resources for unit production, and a forge bonus. This means that when forging items, the cost in magical gems to make that item is reduced by the number in brackets, in this case 2. This stacks with any other forging bonuses you can acquire, and it's going to be a big part of our strategy going forward with Middle Age Ulm. So let's talk about mages. Ulm has a limited selection of mages to recruit. The Master Smiths I've spoken about before, the Black Priests of Ulm, who we can see are Earth 1 and Holy Level 2, with a small chance to get a random, only 10%. And finally, the Priest Smiths, which are Fire 1, Earth 2, and Holy 1. And unfortunately, that's our lot. What these units lack in magical power, we can substitute with quantity. They're fairly cheap and easy to recruit in large numbers, especially in comparison to some other mages. Mages are really the workhorses of your nation in Dominion 6. They do your research for you, and as the game progresses they get access to better damage buffing and summoning spells for use on both the campaign map and in battles. The longer the game goes on, the less we can rely on our normal troops to get things done, and the more we'll have to rely on our pretender and mages to give our troops the tools they need to battle enemy magic users. So let's talk magic itself. Looking at our Master Smith, he has 2 of the 9 magical paths in the game. There are 4 elemental paths: fire, air, water, and earth. 4 sorcery paths: astral, nature, glamour, and death. And finally blood magic, which sits in a category of its own. There are also holy levels for divine magic, such as what our priests have, like the Black Priests of Ulm, which have 2 holy level, or our prophet, who has 3 holy level. But this is different to other types of magic. Every mage will have access, however minor, to one of these magical paths. For each skill level a mage has in a magical path, they'll get some indirect benefits from it. They will also get some stacking benefits if they have 3 or more levels in a particular path. These can be found on page 76 of the Dominion's manual, but I'll bring them up now to quickly speak about them. If you're not sure how to get into the Dominion's manual, click the link above and the video there will explain it. So looking at the indirect magic bonuses table, we can see that you get a plus 10 magic leadership per skill level in a path, with astral giving you 20 per level instead, except for death magic, which instead gives you 50 undead leadership per level. Blood will also give you 10 undead leadership per level as well. Fire magic gives you 10 normal leadership per level as well, but also shortens the lifespan of mages for every level of fire magic. Every level in nature magic will produce 10 additional supplies per level, and also lengthen the mage's natural lifespan. At the breakpoints of 3 and 4, fire, air, and water will give you +5 to the relevant resistance if you pass that breakpoint. Nature gives you +5 poison resistance per breakpoint passed. Earth magic will give your mage +3 natural protection at 3 or more, and affliction resistance +1 at 4, which our god Earthsnake has, which makes him a fairly decent expander. Astral has no level 3 breakpoint, but at level 4 gives you +1 magic resistance. Death at level 3 makes you less likely to die of old age, and 4 gives you +10 morale. Glamour at level 3 gives you false damage regen, which will regenerate 1 false damage per turn. This false damage cannot be healed by other types of regeneration. At level 4 you get True Sight to see through illusions or other glamour magic. Blood is the simplest of the lot, giving you +5 HP for your mage per breakpoint. Just to reiterate, these level 4 and level 3 bonuses stack. So if you're level 4 fire mage, you'll get a bonus +10 fire resistance to help ward off attacks against fire. In order to cast a spell, you must have the required magical paths in order to cast it, which you can get from a mage's base paths from recruitment, boosters, or souping up their power with magical gems in battle. More on that later. As a broad stroke, elemental magic paths are better with less research, but have less utility and aren't as strong as sorcery paths with a lot of research behind them. Obviously this depends on the strategic and tactical situation, but in broad strokes this is usually true. Blood magic is the strange stepchild of magic in that it's centered around one magic school of research, and almost all spells require the sacrifice of blood slaves to be used instead of gems, which you can collect from the world map by harvesting your population for good slaves rather than getting them from searching for magical sites. There are blood sites, but they are much rarer than sites from other magical paths. What do I mean by these sites? Let's come out of the recruitment thing and go over to Felden Forest. We went over it in the last video, but our spy had managed to find a nature magical site in Felden Forest, the Mammoth Forest, which gives us 3 nature gems per turn once captured. Magical sites range in power corresponding with their ability to discover, from levels 1 to 4. Level 1 ones will usually only give 1 gem per turn. Higher difficulty ones to find might give you multiple gems of a single type, or more than 1 type of gem per turn, like 1 fire and 1 earth. Level 3 and 4 magical sites might allow special recruitment once found in the province that are located, like access to sages or rare elemental mages. In order to find a magical site in a province, you need to send a mage to the province in order to search it. For example, let's send this guy to Yankeep. Next turn, we'll be able to select the action, Search for Magical Sites. You can see here that capitals are searched from the start and are highly unlikely to contain any magical sites, so there's no need to search your capital. The level of difficulty that a magical site is the level of skill that a mage needs to have in that particular magical path in order to find the site there. So a level 1 site can be found by any mage with a skill level of 1 in that particular path. A level 2 difficulty site will be found by a level 2 mage. So in Folk's terms, if we go to Yankeep and there's a level 1 fire site, he'll be able to find it because he has a level 1 path in fire. If there's a level 2 fire site there, then he will find nothing. Same goes for his air and earth skill. When searching, a level 4 mage will find all sites of that magical path if there are any in the province that they're searching. So if we chose our Earthsnake and got him to search in Ionia, because he has Earth level 7, he will find any and all Earth sites that are in Ionia. You can also use site searching spells, such as Haruspex for nature or Augury for fire, which will find all magical sites of that particular type in whatever province you target. These have the benefit of not spending a turn moving a mage from one province to another and then spending another turn to search it, but they do cost gems to cast. Magical sites can also affect the scales within the province they are located. Some death sites, for example, may give a death gem income, but also increase the chances of units getting disease while in the province it's located. Do note that these sites will still have this effect regardless of whether or not they've been discovered. Discovering them only lets you know that they are there and gives you any gem income that comes with them. So if they're there, might as well have a search for it, get something for it. Okay, so that's a brief overview of sites and magical paths. Let's move on to the magic schools and the spells themselves. Opening the research page, we can see the 7 schools of magic. Conjuration summons powers and beings from other worlds or planes. It's good for summoning units and for getting some extra powers for your mages. Alteration causes change in the physical world. This school has lots of buffing spells in battle. Evocation projects magic into the physical world, usually violently. Lots of fireballs, lightning strikes, cold bolts, etc. This is your main damaging battle magic school, especially for the elemental paths. Construction is what unlocks different tiers of magic items to forge. It can also let you create magical units to use on the battlefield. Enchantment grants magical properties to units, items, or the land. It contains quite a few more buffing spells for your troops. Thaumaturgy manipulates the magical sphere in the same way you would think about traditional sorcery. It is a combination of utility, damage, and buffing spells. Blood magic is all about, as the name suggests, blood magic. It contains all of the blood magic spells in the game and is a combination of buffing, damage, and utility spells. You've seen the research screen before, so let's go into spells in more detail. Let's right-click on Evocation to go into this school, and let's try and find Flying Shards. Flying Shards is an Earth magic spell, so let's press the hotkey E to only show Earth spells. Excellent, there it is. You can do this sorting for any magic path, and you can get the key bindings using the question mark button on your keyboard. On the left of the spell is what pass you need to cast the spell, and the number of icons is the level the magic user needs in order to cast it. In this case, level 1 of Earth. If you see a magical circle next to the name of the spell, for example like this one, this spell is a ritual. It must be cast outside of combat in a province with a lab, and it will take 1 month to cast. You can right-click any spell in order to get a detailed look at what it does in either the research screen or when selecting a spell for a commander to cast in combat. So looking at Flying Shards, we can see that it's an Earth 1 combat spell, meaning it's used on the battlefield. Its base range is 30 squares, and the plus icon next to it tells us that the range is increased by 5 squares for every extra level the caster is. So our Master Smiths at Earth level 2 would have a range of 35 squares in combat, as the spell is base level 1 to cast and they have 1 extra level. By comparison, Earthsneck, who is Earth level 7, has a range of 60 squares, quite an increase in range. The casting time of a spell is how long a spell will take to cast in relation to a normal combat round. 75% means that it will take 3/4 of a combat round to cast. A casting time of 100% will take a full combat round, and a cast time of 300% will take 3 full combat rounds to cast. The area of effect is what will be targeted by this spell. In the case of Flying Shards, it will target 1 person in range for all of its effects. The number of effects in this case means how many shards will be produced. The base number is 4. However, again with the plus sign, we can see that for every extra level the caster has, the total number is increased by 2. So using our previous example, our Master Smith will create a total of 6 shards per cast, while Earthsneck will create a total of 16 shards. The precision value is the precision of these shards, which is added to the mage's own precision. As we can see, this is a precision of 0, so the accuracy is fully dependent on the mage's own precision. There's a good chance, given the base range of 30 plus whatever extra the mage adds, that these shards will deviate quite a lot from their original target, which can be good for doing a wide spread of damage. The fatigue cost to cast the spell is base level 30. So a level 1 Earth Mage will take 30 fatigue when they cast this spell. Remember that casting spells will also double the encumbrance of whatever armor the caster is wearing as well. So if this mage had, say, a ringed hauberk which has encumbrance 1, for every cast of the spell they will accumulate 32 total fatigue. Given that you only lose 1 fatigue per combat round usually, and Flying Shards has a casting time of less than a combat round, after 4 casts of Flying Shards, these level 1 mages would be over 100 fatigue and they'd fall unconscious. Be very careful about how much fatigue casting spells costs. Last thing you want is all your mages to be having sleepy battle time when the enemy's flanking cavalry comes in. The minus next to the fatigue cost means that for each skill level the caster has that exceeds the minimum cast requirement for the spell, he takes a fraction of the fatigue cost, with the numerator of this fraction being 1, and the denominator being 1 plus his mage skill minus the minimum skill level to cast the spell. So our Master Smith has level 2 Earth. His denominator for this fraction is 1 plus his excess magic skill, so in this case 2. So that makes our fraction 1 over 2, or half. So he takes half the stated fatigue cost, so half of 30, which is 15. We add on this plus double his armor encumbrance, which is 2, so he takes a total of 17 fatigue to cast this spell, in comparison to the previously stated level 1's 32. Earthsneck in comparison will only take a sixth of the stated fatigue, which is only 5, far less than the previous 2 examples. The damage of these Flying Shards is either slashing or bludgeoning damage, chosen randomly as all basic damage types are. And they do a base 7 of that type of damage if they hit a unit. If you're not sure how this works, see part 5 of my combat breakdown in this tutorial series. I'll put a link up above. From the plus, we can see that the damage increases for every extra level the caster has. So our Master Smith will be casting 6 shards that each do a base damage of 8, whereas Earthsneck creates 16 shards, each of them doing 13 base damage, which again is quite a difference. You can also see that there's a restriction on using Flying Shards in that it cannot be used underwater. Any restrictions for spells will be shown in its detailed card. Finally, a small descriptor of the spell can be seen at the bottom of the screen here. You can see from this explanation why higher skilled mages can be individually much more effective than lesser skilled ones. They will fatigue slower from casting spells, they'll have a greater option of what spells they can cast, and the spells that they can cast will usually have either more effects or do more damage than those cast by lesser mages. So how can you make mages able to cast spells better? Gems are an easy one. A mage can use a total number of gems equal to his skill level in a magic path. So for Earth Magic, our level 1 mage can use 1 gem, our Master Smith can use 2, and our Earthsneck can use up to 7. Gems are used for specific spells that have gem costs to cast, such as Summon Lesser Elemental we've gone over previously. A mage can also use a gem to increase their skill level in a magic path by 1. The mage can only increase their skill by 1, and only for the next spell cast. You can't increase a magical path which you don't have at least 1 level in. You need 1 level in a path to use that type of gem. So for our previous example with Flying Shards, our level 1 Earth Mage can use 1 Earth Gem to make him temporarily level 2. This will give the spell the same characteristics as if our Master Smith cast it instead. This can be very useful for reducing the fatigue cost when casting spells for low-level magic users. But you need gems to do it. So there's logistical challenges and a cost-benefit analysis you need to consider before you slap 30 gems on every single mage. Do note that you will get more gems as the game progresses. If it's truly a life or death situation, such as an early capital siege, it's better to use all the gems at your disposal to increase your magical might so that you might win the battle, so you can get it back later, than lose the most important battle of your game just because you wanted to be a bit stingy. If you want to boost your battle magic for a whole battle rather than just for the next spell, there are some spells that allow you to increase your mage's power, let's go to Conjuration. In Conjuration, we can talk about Summon Earth Power, which we have discussed before. We can see that it requires 2 levels in Earth Magic in order to cast this spell. Going into the details, we can see that it takes a full round to cast. It only affects the caster, and it has a base fatigue cost of 20, with the same minus for fatigue calculation we went over previously. When this is cast, it gives a +1 bonus to Earth Magic for the caster for the rest of the battle, and also gives the caster Reinvigoration +4, which means they recover an additional 4 fatigue per battle round, for a total of 5 fatigue removed per round if there are no other sources of Reinvigoration. So let's say we want our hypothetical level 1 Earth Mage to go relatively Super Saiyan. We give him a gem to use so he can increase his Earth Magic level to 2, so he can now cast Summon Earth Power. This costs him 20 fatigue, but for the rest of the battle he's now a level 2 Earth Mage. If we give him another gem, he can use that to cast Flying Shards, and he will cast that as if he was a level 3 Earth Mage, taking a third of the fatigue from the spell, creating 4 extra shards with higher damage than the base damage of the spell. At this point, he's even better than our Master Smiths. It's not really economical to do this with your gems for normal battles, or even really the best use of your gems, but it's good to know of in case of make or break situations. Going back to the spell list, ritual spells are spells with this little icon here to the left of their name. These spells are cast outside of combat as an action your mages can take in a turn. They will take 1 turn to perform the ritual, and the mage cannot do anything else other than perform this ritual. What effect these rituals have depends on the spell and the path level of the caster performing it. Let's look at Summon Ogres. We can see that it is an Earth level 1 spell that's also a ritual. We can also see the magic gem cost the spell over here on the right. Opening up the details for the spell, we can see that it summons 5 Ogres base, plus an additional Ogre for every 2 extra level the caster has. So our Master Smith would summon the base 5 Ogres. Earthsneck would summon a total of 8 Ogres. 6 additional levels divided by 2 is 3. 5 plus 3 is 8 Ogres. Nice. Coming out of the spell list, if you ever want to clear these filters, just press the spacebar. Finally, some spells you can see require 2 paths of magic to cast. These are called cross paths or cross spells. Looking at, for example, Summon Fire Ants, we can see that it's a ritual that requires the caster to have 2 levels of fire magic and 1 level in nature magic. It also costs 9 fire gems in order to do this ritual. Looking into the spell detail, we can see that it produces 10 Fire Ants base. For an increase in the number of effects, you produce 1 extra Fire Ant for every extra level the caster is. For its increase in number of effects, we take the first magic path listed, in this case fire, because the fire symbols are before the nature symbols. So for every extra fire level a caster has, it will produce 1 more Fire Ant. For cross paths, the other path isn't brought into this consideration, it's purely just there in order to cast the spell. So in this case, a level 2 fire and level 5 nature wizard would only produce 10 Fire Ants, whereas a level 5 fire wizard with level 1 nature would produce 14 ants. Okay, enough spells, time for items. Let's come back to the construction school and look at the details. We can see here what we can unlock at various levels of construction by clicking on, for example, the construction of magic trinkets. This will list every item that we can make at this level of construction research. Like the spell list, we can again sort by magical path, such as only earth items by pressing the E key. We can do this for any of the construction levels. Let's go back and look at construction level 3 and lesser magical items. Here, we're going to look at 3 items that Ulm can really make use of throughout the game. Sorting by earth, in the one-handed weapons, we can see this weapon, the Dwarven Hammer. Looking at it, this requires Earth Magic level 3 and 15 Earth Gems in order to forge. Once forged, however, it gives a 2 forge bonus to whoever is holding it. This will stack with our Mastersmith's existing bonus for a total of 4 forging bonus. This means a smith with a hammer reduces the gem cost of any magical item they create by 4, which is a crazy amount of savings. This means they can reduce a normally 5 gem item down to only 1, which is the minimum cost to forge an item. Sorry, you can't gain gems through forging as much as I wish that could happen. We're going to use our smiths with our hammers to make two-handed weapons, which we can see by coming out of this detailed look and going to the two-handed weapon or pressing 2 on your keyboard. Out of these two-handed weapons, we're going to be using most likely the Great Swords of Sharpness, also abbreviated in the community to GSS. These swords can be given to our Black Lords, who are commander versions of our Black Knights, to give them some ridiculous damage in combat. Let's have a look at the sword. The Great Sword of Sharpness does magical damage, so it can hurt ethereal beings like ghosts. It's armor piercing, so it ignores up to 50% of the target's protection. And it's two-handed, so we add 125% of our strength rather than 100% as normal to our damage rolls. It also gives some pretty good attack and defense buffs to our unit, and it has okay length for repelling. With the sword, we'll use a magical trinket, which we can get to by coming out of here and pressing on this ring icon, or number 8. The trinket in question is this one, the Braces of Protection. Having a look at this costs 5 gems, 1 if we use a smith and a hammer, and it gives the user +2 defense skill and an additional 2 protection on their head and body. The unit wearing this gets all of this and additional 0 encumbrance, which is quite a steal. So for 2 Master Smiths and a total of 2 gems per turn, we can outfit a Black Lord every single turn, and probably even more when we get even more Smiths. These Black Lords can turn into quite scary combatants with just a few troops to support them, so much so that they might be able to take provinces just by themselves. These items will also make it so they could potentially kill even a normal giant in single combat. This kind of commander is what is known as a light thug in the community. We'll go over what exactly that means when we get a few of them out on the field. Our last item, and the reason I was so excited by our Air Random Master Smith, is also a magical trinket. We'll press A to filter by air, and we'll have a look at the Owl Quill. The Owl Quill costs 5 air gems, so again, only 1 with a smith and a hammer, and requires at least air magic level 1 in order to forge. When this quill is equipped, it increases the mage's research points generated per turn by 6. So currently, our Master Smiths have a research point generation of 11. With +6, it gives them 17 research points per turn, which is really quite impressive research for such a cheap and spammable mage. And if we forge these using a hammer, it only costs us 1 gem per quill. This can really ramp up your research quite quickly if you can get 1 or 2 of these mages spamming these quills out in a turn. It's one of the advantages Middle Age Ulm has. The ability to get ahead in the research game to get better spells and forgeable items to use against other nations before their better spellcasters outpace you in terms of magical damage and utility. Okay, that was a big in-depth look at the spell, mages and forging systems. Let's go into our moves for this turn. So we'll come out of the research screen and back to the main map. Going to Ulm, we'll recruit another Master Smith and a couple more Black Knights this turn, removing the ones that we queued up next turn. Going over to Yangkeep, we can see in Yangkeep that we can recruit a couple more light cavalry, which we'll do here as well. Let's recruit one more. Moving over to Ionia, let's see what we can recruit here. So we can recruit a Horse Tribe Chief, which we'll get 1 of, and a couple of Horse Tribe Cavalry, which we'll get a few of as well. Seems we can only recruit 3 with 1 coming next turn. That's fine. That will probably do for our recruitment this turn. We have a bit of gold left, so let's see if we can increase Ionia's defense to 10. Ah, that's a shame, we're stuck at 9. Okay, let's see if we can reduce the number of light horsemen we're recruiting in Yangkeep, and then increase it to 10. Excellent, there we go. Now that we have 10 province defense, this will help us reduce unrest by 1 per month, which is excellent for our income. We'll tell our Prophet and Earthsneck to move into Felden Forest to fight there. We've already asked our airsmith to move into Yankeep, and we're going to use him to search for magical sites to see if we can find any air sites, or even earth sites if there's any there. Any gem income is good income. Going through our idle commanders, you can see that we have our scout that we recruited in Yankeep. You can see that unlike before, he can actually move to either Felden Forest or Hamain in one turn. You can tell this because their flags are lit up. This will be because both Ionia and Ulm are currently our occupied provinces, which means we don't get a penalty like we do for moving into enemy provinces. Let's send him to Hamain, and we can send him to Forest of Gillen next turn. We also have our spy. Let's go to him. So our spy is currently sitting in the underground world, and we can see there's a province of about 130 enemy units. Because our spy does have the spy trait, he is actually going to be better at collecting information than our scout. That's probably actually accurate. If so, that army is going to take a little bit to crack, so we might have to come back for that later. In Dominion 6, the underground is surprisingly nasty to expand into, so we'll need to be pretty careful. Let's move to the province The Whole, and we can find out more about the underground. Pressing N again, that's us done for this turn. Excellent, so we've done our recruitment, our research is being handled, and our actions are all done. Let's end our turn. And with that, we're at the start of our 5th turn. There was obviously a battle in Felden Forest, so let's have a little look at it. And fingers crossed, everything goes quite well. We're just going to skip ahead and see what we can do. Earthsnake's coming in. He's going to attack those archers. Our infantry of Ulm absolutely dominate those woodsmen. And we can see here that he's attacking what looks to be some trees that have been brought up. And with that, their entire army is just completely collapsed. Excellent. I don't think we took a single casualty there. No, we didn't. Perfect. That was a really good showing by us, actually. The fact that we took no damage there means that our commander and our prophet will be able to return back with even more troops than potentially would have before. Okay, and with that, there's no other messages, nothing else happened over the end turn, so that's us. Excellent, we're at start turn 5, we made some pretty good progress in getting a couple of provinces, and we can start moving on to the next stage of our plan next time. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about the magic system in Dominion 6 and how to best use your mages and what to head to in terms of research. It's a very complicated subject, so just try some things, remember what I've told you, and you'll get it in no time. Next time we'll have a quick discussion of priests, scales and buildings, as well as ramping up on our expansion. Until then, take care.